So what I want to do now is talk a little bit about the second pathway that we might use to getting into new businesses, which is acquiring an existing business or a new business idea. Now, it takes a long time for people to come up with viable business ideas that might be linked to serious market opportunities, where there's sufficient market, sufficient demand to generate profitable sales for the organisation. And so rather than going through that process of actually starting a brand new business, what many entrepreneurs do is look at other ways to get into business through the acquisition of another business venture. And there are a number of reasons why they do this. There's a number of reasons why they would look at buying a business rather than developing their own business ideas. The first advantage is that future success is likely. Because you're buying an existing business, because you're buying a business that's already got an operating history and has demonstrated performance over a period of time, you're in a position to make an assessment about whether it's likely to succeed into the future. You've got a client base, you've got a knowledge base from your employers that you inherit with that particular business. So by engaging in purchasing that business, you're likely to be more successful in the future. It can also greatly reduce the time and effort it takes for an organisation to get into business. If you're again going to start up a business from scratch, it takes time to come up with the idea, to turn that idea into a business model, to get support for that business model from stakeholders and investors, and then to actually get that product into the market without knowing whether it's going to be a success. So by simply buying something that's already a going concern, you can literally come in, turn the keys, open the business, and away you go. The third advantage is that you possibly get a pretty good price when you're buying an existing business venture, because again, you're able to negotiate, you're able to look at the performance of the business, and you're able to ask hard questions about whether the business is being successful. So when an entrepreneur looks to acquire a business or a business concept, there are a number of key questions that they do need to ask prior to making that purchase. The first thing they need to ask is, why is this business being sold? What is it that has led the owners of this business and this particular business model to put this business on the market? Is it that they simply don't have the time available anymore to run the business, or the desire or the passion to commit to it? Or is there something underlying? Are there some fundamental problems in the business model or the industry that mean that that business is not going to be viable into the future? We need to have a very good understanding of what the current physical conditions are of the business. How's the business facilities and infrastructure? Are they in good quality? Are they in need of repair? Again, if you take over, say, a restaurant or a cafe, and all of the kitchen needs to be replaced within the first 6 months, that's a very substantial cost that your business is going to have to absorb. We need to think about what is the current condition of any inventory they have, and what is the status of that inventory. Does that inventory stay with the business when you purchase it, or is the previous owner going to take that with them as a byproduct of their previous ownership? We need to think about how many employees are going to remain, because again, one of the advantages of buying an existing business is you're buying their knowledge, skills and expertise. And so if those people leave the business, then really all you're buying is the business name and the reputation. We need to think about what type of competition does this business face. Is part of the reason that they're actually selling that they're under a lot of competition, and that they may not be able to deal with that competition in an effective way. And we need to do our due diligence in terms of the financial performance of the organisation. What does its financial performance look like now, and what is its financial performance going to look like into the future? And these are very important questions that we need to ask. Now, all of these questions can be addressed, and just because, for example, a business is facing heavy competition doesn't mean it's not an attractive business to buy. Or just because some of the employees leave the business, again, doesn't mean it's not an attractive business to buy. But we do need to seek some sort of answers to these questions. One of the most commonly used ways of people getting into business through the lens of purchasing a business is to engage in the franchise process. And franchising is very, very prevalent in business, particularly here in Australia. So if you think about some of the famous franchises that we see, you've got things like McDonald's and KFC and Pizza Hut in the in the food industry. You've got Dome coffee shops, Starbucks. These are all examples of franchises. Jim's mowing and house cleaning services, again, are a great example of a franchise business model. Even in banking, Bank of Queensland is a franchise business banking model. So franchising is great because what you're doing when you take a franchise out is that you pay a fee, and in return for that fee you're able to gain access to the trademark, trade name, business system and copyright that comes with that business, and then operate that business in a defined geographical location. So for example, if I buy a McDonald's franchise, then I'm able to operate that McDonald's business within a set geographical region, and I will gain extensive support from McDonald's in the promotion, running and operation of that particular business. So franchising is a great way because, again, you're not having to develop the business model yourself. You're not having to develop the marketing yourself. You're not having to develop the brand yourself. Instead, you're buying all of those things off the shelf, which makes it a lot easier for you to get into business from day one. Now, there's a couple of terms that you need to understand when you think about franchising. We need to think about the franchisee. So the franchisee is the person who is buying the franchise. So if I buy a franchise from McDonald's, I'm a franchisee. And the franchisor is the person who is selling that particular franchise system. So again, in that case, McDonald's would be the franchisor because they're selling that system or the use of that system to me. Now, it's important to remember that franchises are complex legal arrangements that govern and dictate how you can actually operate and run a business within that particular contract arrangement. Now, there are some things to consider with franchising. It does give you a combination of independence because you still are your own business owner. You own that particular franchise and you can run it within the bounds of those contracts. You can run it however you like. But you're also part of a larger umbrella organisation. And so what that means is that you're able to gain support from that broader franchise system. So again, one of the reasons people like to buy things like McDonald's franchises is that you get a great level of support from McDonald's centrally. And we know that in a place like Australia, 1/3 of all retail sales is actually generated by franchise business. So it's again a very commonly used method of business, and sometimes it's an easier method to get investment because people know that that franchise has been successful. And we see that franchises are generally legally independent but economically dependent. They depend on the franchise system for their economic viability. So what are some of the advantages of franchising? By buying the franchise system, you get access to the brand name, the business system and processes. You get a proven track record of business success, so most of those businesses are successful. You get training and guidance on how to run the business, which is a very important thing, particularly if you've not had a lot of business background previously. And you get detailed financial assistance in actually running it, so they give you the financial systems that you need to actually run that business effectively. Some of the disadvantages, though, there's quite a steep franchise fee, and franchisees are often shocked to find how much they have to pay to be able to operate and run that business in a jurisdiction. There's often a loss of control because someone else owns the franchise. They own the concept, and so there are boundaries around what you can and can't do. And look, in some cases, there are unfulfilled promises that come with franchise systems. So often there are tensions between the franchisee and the franchisor over what is and isn't to be provided. And a final thing I want to talk about in terms of a new business opportunity or for businesses, for entrepreneurs starting up a new business, is this concept of social venturing. Now, I know in topic 3 we did talk a little bit about social venturing, but I just want to reiterate that this is again a way that an entrepreneur might choose to get into business. And in fact, a lot of people who have a long-term desire to go into business often start off in social enterprise as a way of actually building their business skills. So people have realised that by running these social enterprises, you actually build a lot of real-world abilities, and so you're able to use those abilities in an effective way in other for-profit businesses. Now, we know from our previous discussions that social venturing is when entrepreneurs are running the business with a desire to solve social problems or to overcome environmental problems. So there's a really deep-seated understanding of the need for an entrepreneur to contribute something back to their community. And so again, a lot of people start off their business journey through the lens of these sort of social enterprises. There's a double challenge that entrepreneurs face in this space of trying to affect social change, but also do that within a profitable business model, because they're still trying to make money either for themselves or to invest in their social cause. And social venturing allows us to apply and refine our business skills to solve real-world challenges or real-world problems that an organisation might face. And those skills, once honed through the lens of social venturing, might be then applied into more profit-centred business models. And finally, we need to acknowledge that social venturing can take many different forms. And there's lots of different approaches that people use to social ventures. At one end of the spectrum, we might be looking at a cooperative business model where we set up, so for example, a buying group where people share their resources to purchase products to achieve a particular social outcome. We might look at a not-for-profit enterprise. So we might be a business who wants to operate not to make money, but to provide skills and training for people from less disadvantaged backgrounds who need those particular skills. So again, social venturing can take many forms, and it can be a really important way of entrepreneurs getting into the business startup process.